Hello there, and welcome back to the ASMR Critique. My name is Joseph, and today we will be looking at the super fire new Flaming Lips album that just dropped yesterday. American Head has been released song by song online since early 2020. Coyne has spoken about how personal this 16th record is to both himself and to fellow band member and multi-instrumentalist Stephen Drozd, and how it deals with the loss of close family members and friends, and coming out on the other side of addiction. Coyne has also described this album as their attempt to make a distinctly American record, something of a reaction to their American influences in the genres of classic rock, folk rock, and psychedelic rock, and to Tom Petty specifically. I will include some links in the description to interviews with Coyne. Now let's talk about the lyrics. First off, the lyrics in the album will read very differently to people new to the band, as opposed to longtime fans who've been following them for their whole careers. Memories, death, farewells, lamentations, existential pondering, and coming out on the other side of addiction. An addiction to experience, and to seeking for gratification from feeling our way through this gross world, and looking back to those still stuck there, and trying to bring them out of it, to show them that there is another side to it, that they don't need to stay lost in a cycle of seeking God through drugs. If you follow the Flaming Lips closely, you'll know that Stephen Drozd has been struggling with substance abuse issues for his whole life, a fact that has impacted the band in many ways, often publicly as they have been forced to cancel shows due to hospitalizations and other messy incidents I won't get into here. Coyne and Drozd have been credited with co-writing this album based upon a very specific concept, a sort of what-if alternate universe story. Like, what if their older brothers had crossed paths with Tom Petty in their youth, and how that might have changed all of their lives. I'm providing all this background so that when I say that this album deals with drugs, for the Lips, it is clearly from a place of empathy and understanding. I would say that addiction, which more often than not is a sign of or reaction to childhood trauma, is hypercommon in this modern world, to the point where if we are not actively moderating ourselves, and even the little things like sugar, gaming, and streaming video binging, we can become blind to it. Another exemplary feat is that this album manages to have its cake and eat it too. It is paradoxically perfect. It is both psychedelic and personal. It is folk and it is electronic. It is art rock in its scope, but borderline mainstream in its compositions. I think this is the Lips' best and most focused effort since at least Embryonic, and even at this early stage, I'm fairly confident in saying that it might even be better than that heavy album. As much as I love the Lips' whole catalog, there's an accessibility here, and a focus that's been sorely lacking in their work for over a decade. They finally seem totally in control of their sonic impulses again, after getting lost in the clouds. American Head is a trippy album, a hallucinogenic trip, and simultaneously a coded message to help listeners overcome their addictions so that they can grow and move on from the pain caused by substance abuse in all forms. When we're looking for God or enlightenment in a pill or relief, or behind the glass of the many screens we look at on a daily basis, we're missing the point. On a technical level, I feel confident proclaiming that this is the Flaming Lips' random access memories. It features the best of their abilities technically, and is incredibly polished, while also seeming extremely intimate and timely. It is a time and space capsule for some of the best moments of their entire career. The mixing on this album is off the charts. It is a masterpiece in sound mixing. It's a visceral experience. I could fall asleep to this and probably never feel an urge to wake up. So before I offer my own take on the songs, I just wanted to say that Coyne himself has been very candid and transparent about the meanings of each of these songs and about the band's goals for this album. With that said, I wanted to offer my personal takes on all of the tracks and how they work for me on an individual level, which I wrote out from initial listens before reading his words. Then as you hear me talk, I'll have what Coyne has written about them up here, and you can compare how far off I was, or not, if that's what you want to do. Alright, so let's go track by track. Will you return when you come down? The deep, delicate, meticulous layering of sounds is exquisite, even in the album's opening minute. Wayne Coyne's trademark vocals cap off a beautiful, haunting melody, calling for a friend to heed their fallen friend's warnings and to give up the habit. Xylophone bells ring, and the restrained bass, probably the best and most pronounced bass line on the album, eases us through the unpacking of a tragedy seen through the fog of a drug trip. The backing vocals harmonize towards the end of the song, and then are joined by a female voice, that of Casey Musgraves, who's introduced here and will be singing on several other tracks on the album. Watching the light bugs glow. This is the perfect song for listening to on a lonely fall evening, driving home after a long day of work, just decompressing, thinking about life. It's a short song, but thoughtful and beautiful, with a strong vocal solo by Casey Musgraves that has me hoping for further collaborations with her in the future. Her last vocal solo that begins around the 2-minute mark, it ends at 2:13, hits like a soft ear massage if you're wearing good over-the-ear headphones. The jazzy piano touches, echoed vocal samples, and improvisational nature of this song make it more than a little evocative of Pink Floyd's The Great Gig in the Sky, which I think is wildly appropriate, considering that Floyd is another band that struggled with substance abuse issues and that song was released in sort of the heyday of the psychedelic rock movement. I do wonder if the repeating sample that goes all throughout the song is meant to represent the dual beeps of an EKG machine. Flowers of Neptune 6. This song definitely feels like a long overdue evolution of ideas established in the Soft Bulletin. The music video of this one captures the feeling of getting high alone perfectly. Doing acid and missing friends who have gone, the narrator sees glowing bits and imagining them to be like little spaceships. The way the guitar builds and then winds right back down so pleasantly in that first pre-chorus sent chills down my spine. The synths sneak up on you. When that fatty bass synth hits, it fills a space between the notes that brings the dynamic range of your awareness of the track back into what in film we would call a deep focus. I don't know what you would call it in music terminology. I'm not an expert. This track is a bit of an echo on songs from the Soft Bulletin. What is the light? Feeling yourself disintegrate, and a spoonful weighs a ton. All seem to be echoed here. Dinosaurs on the Mountain. This one may not be everyone's favorite, but there's a certain innocent mood. It's one of those slower, ponderous songs where the layering builds and the percussion evolves throughout, reminiscent of tracks on Soft Bulletin and Yoshimi, and to a lesser extent, Mystics. You kind of have to give yourself into this one, and maybe it will weave its spell on you, or maybe it won't. The verses seem to suggest that Wayne's wishful thinking that we could live with dinosaurs is undercut by the realization that even if dinosaurs were around, where would we put them? How could we live with them, with the world being the way it is? They wouldn't be able to make it on their own. So, as the song gets sadder and more layered towards the end, this realization then underlies a deep sadness that the existence of the natural world itself almost seems dependent on us getting out of its way as much as possible. The technical wizardry is carefully restrained for most of the song, allowing it to create an empty headspace that allows for even an analytical mind to stretch and ponder. At the movies on Quaaludes. The first verse says it all, really. Thinking of you and me at the movies. We're so high that we forget that we're alive. As we destroy our brains till we believe we're dead. It's the American dream in the American head. Though that verse reads as being pointed on paper, I would say that the tone of this song is simultaneously nostalgic and sad. It begins working its way back from a memory. I'm picturing a dark movie theater, shared space in which Coyne realizes this is as good as it gets, it being the American dream, the ability to live so richly that you can not only afford to take mind-altering drugs and go see a movie in the dark, but that doing so, opening yourself up to influences and letting Hollywood populate your more susceptible, opened mind with its propaganda constitutes the kind of escapism, the pursuit of happiness, if you will, that is sure to keep us clawing around in the dark in the lower levels of consciousness. It's a surrenderance of our own mental autonomy to a prison constructed from willfully overloading one's senses. Coyne sings about being fools and getting rich someday. The haunting background vocals and mini solos overlap to wrap up this haunting song. Mother, I've taken LSD. This can be seen as a coming-of-age song that basically describes a growth of consciousness or Perhaps if you'd like to read deeper into it, a sort of stretch of human consciousness towards gross perception. It's the perception reaching like tentacles towards something real, only for it to realize that nothing is really there but the end, the void, the sadness. It's the logical endpoint of an atheistic view of the world. The narrator also laments their friends who've gone and won't be seen again. Kim was caught stealing, presumably to feed a habit. Tommy, character mentioned earlier, based upon Wayne's older brother, went through a life-changing motorcycle crash. But in the early lines, Coyne is apologizing, saying he's sorry he didn't see how sad everything is before. So this song does describe psychological growth, but also the sadness that comes with that growth. This song essentially functions as a good counterpoint to, or companion track to, the hopeful Do You Realize from Yoshimi. Brother I. This is an intensely personal song. Coyne is pleading for his brother to survive. The theme of EKG is persistent here. Pounding bass drums, relentless percussion throughout the entire song, like a Native American ritual, is coupled with plucking synths or strings to fill out those upper registers. The darkness being changed into light seems to me an allegory for a new consciousness entering the world and shining its own light on it. Coyne is asking over and over, can you live forever? Is there an afterlife? What happens to consciousness after we die? The confrontation with death has happened and been, if not overcome, then at least acknowledged. The denial phase has now given way into the bargaining phase. You and me selling weed. This song is, best as I can see it, a great description of the search for escapism through fantasy. A fantasy, perhaps, or a good memory from one's youth. Dreaming and hoping for something better to get quote-unquote out of the scene. Ultimately, despite Coyne's hopes, it's an unrealistic exercise, and the tempo increases to a more frantic and less focused pace that is undercut by stirring strings and bassy tones that seem to be dragging the listener underwater. From a marijuana high, that would be kind of the paranoia phase. The last minute and a half of this song is just so immensely beautiful, but sad as it seems to convey the death of a once beautiful but misguided dream. Mother, please don't be sad. Alright. Now, this song legit made me cry. It wasn't even the first time I heard it, maybe the 5th or 6th time, but the first time after hearing it as part of an album. Before I go over my experience, yes, this song was based on a very personal story from a pivotal moment in Wayne Coyne's life. He was 17 and being held up by gunpoint at a convenience store he was working at. The experience evidently changed his entire outlook on life. I was driving for DoorDash yesterday afternoon. This song came on and I just totally lost it. Just started weeping. Maybe this is really weird to someone who's never felt it before, but listening to this song, I felt a really deep connection with the afterlife. The lyrics and the feeling behind them are so intensely personal. I couldn't help but relate to it on the level of my own personal tragedies. I literally felt that my late sister was reaching out to me to comfort me through this song. The piano and horn combination that starts this thing off reminds me of the Beatles, A Day in the Life, and Eleanor Rigby. Then when the guitar picks up after that first chorus, it goes into that lower register for the first time, which is like totally comforting. It's like a big hug wrapping around you. Then the strings kick in and highlight the whole composition and guide you through the rest of the journey. Remember all the others that are still alive. Their love will help you, and so would I. Remember to let the dogs outside, 'cause I won't be there tonight. Mother, please don't be sad. Those lines perfectly capture how I felt after hearing that my sister had passed. I felt a very personal connection and message, as if she was speaking directly to me. And she was asking, not just me, but everyone in my family, to please not be sad, to not be sad for her, and for us to attend to each other here in the world. And to our own duties in the world, to not put those aside, to not forget, to, basically be excellent to each other, and to be there for each other, to be present and available and loving and kind. She was asking me to not forget all that stuff, and these lyrics just hit me so intensely personally. And I think, and these lyrics just capture that feeling so perfectly well. I've had a couple of near-death experiences myself, and that's ultimately what I'd felt, is that I just didn't want anyone left behind to worry about me, but to just be able to not grieve and to move on and to be able to live their own lives. Because ultimately, like, grief is for the living. It's not for those who have gone. Those who have gone are off to somewhere better. I ultimately believe that. And I'm not sure if Coyne believes that. He has said that he doesn't really believe in God, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyway, Mother Please Don't Be Sad is probably my favorite song on the album. It is an absolute tour de force. When We Die, When We're High. This song is a total palate cleanser. It's a kind of meditation. I'm reading these lyrics. When we die, when we're high. Now, I know that Coyne talks about this, but the real question is, now you can look at this in two different ways. You can look at it in the intended meaning, which if we literally die while we're high, do we actually die? Do we know that we're dead? Does the consciousness even go through that shift? Or does he mean the temporary death or the cessation of the consciousness of the individual self in the moment? To me, the whole thing seems to describe the journey of consciousness from our realm to this sort of beyond realm and back. Anyway, it's a wonderful instrumental piece, and you can just listen to it and picture whatever you want to in your head. I close my eyes and I picture the trips that Don Gately was going through in Infinite Jest, and how they're described just like disappearing from the world. Assassins of Youth. This is a high-register pop song that reminded me that, hey, sometimes, maybe our best moments are behind us. Here, Coyne is recognizing that he's aged, and taking stock of what that means going forward. The premise here is that he's gone through something life-changing and is trying to get advice from his younger self. Yes, there's much wisdom that can be gotten with age, but you do lose something too. To me, the best way I could describe this song sonically is a reimagining or maybe even a deconstruction of the 70s or 80s power ballad. But instead of relying on a powerful mid-range driven by guitar, it trades high and low frequencies, getting more intense orally until it reaches that fever pitch and rolls back to the fundamentals after the bridge. There's certainly something very tongue-in-cheek about this song. God and the Policeman. This is a pretty straightforward song about being on the run. It involves tragedy, loss, and guilt. If you subscribe to the album theory, you could just relate this tragic aftermath to the course of events described in previous tracks. Here, Coyne and Musgraves are reflecting on past mistakes and asking God for forgiveness, even as rapid xylophone hits double for police sirens to decorate the whole piece. And diligent brush hits on the snare bring the composition down to earth. It's kind of the antithesis to Mr. Ambulance Driver from At War with the Mystics. My Religion Is You. So this is the album closer. Though the obvious reading here is that Coyne is singing to God, this can also be seen in several other ways. It could be taken as a love song. If we want to take a third metatextual reading here, we might posit that Coyne is singing directly to the listener, telling them that they are his religion. So in effect, his religion is all of us, any of the conscious beings listening to this song and internalizing it. He might also be saying that he believes in God, but not in the tenets of any form of organized religion. So let's say for a moment it's a praise song. Is he praising anyone specifically? It's certainly not Buddha, Krishna, or Jesus, though he does tell the listener that whatever or whoever it is that you believe, that you should truly own it and not phone it in. I seem to recall Coyne saying in past interviews that he wished that he could believe in God because it would make his life so much easier, but that he can't. He just can't make himself do it. So, in conclusion, this is definitely going on my top 5 Flaming Lips albums, maybe even top 3. I'm not even going to attempt to rank the top 5 right now, but my top 3 is probably, in order, The Soft Bulletin, Yoshimi, and Embryonic. This album's going to get a lot of play in my car in the coming months, that's for sure. 2020 might have been a pretty crazy year, but at least it's given us some pretty good pop culture gems so far. This album is one of the few bright spots in my 2020. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, I would be very happy if you would please leave me a like, comment, and subscribe in order to help me grow this channel. And if you are subscribed, please hit that notification button so that you won't miss any new videos. Thanks so much for coming, and take care.